Order. I'd like to start the meeting by recognizing from the homeland of the 30 First Nation communities of this area we now call the Fraser Valley Regional District, where we live, work, and learn. The important decisions that we make at the local government level can affect First Nation communities and Indigenous peoples and organizations in a great many ways, and today and into the future. So as part of our collective responsibility, I commit that we continually examine the work that we do and ensure that it's guided by the principles of inclusion, collaboration, and reconciliation. So with that in mind, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ms. Kinnaman, first item.
Thank you, Chair Law. I'm looking for approval of the agenda, addenda, and late items.
So moved.
Yeah, it's moved by Director Facio, second by Director Mercer. Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, the item carries. Next item.
Next is 4.1. We have a delegation from the Fraser Valley Destination Management Council, and we have Claire Seeley, who is the Manager of Tourism from the City of Mission.
Welcome, Ms. Seeley.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me this evening. So my name's Claire Seeley, and I'm the Manager of Tourism for the City of Mission. And I'm here to provide an overview and an update on the Experience the Fraser project. I would like to acknowledge I'm here this evening on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the coastal Coast Salish peoples. Now I've got to learn to use there we go. So back in 2018, Destination BC started working on some destination development plans and strategies with over 20 different regions across BC. And they did this in collaboration with Indigenous Tourism BC and several ministries within the province. And the idea really was to look at creating the supply side of tourism. So looking at how we could support infrastructure development and create remarkable experiences across all of BC that were classed as world-class destinations. So for the Fraser Valley region, we had over 100 different stakeholders who participated in this. And one of the main resounding pieces that came out of it was the need to really focus on the river-based activities and look at trail connectivity. Hence our experience here this evening at looking at the Experience the Fraser project. This is a 10-year strategic plan. We're now in year 2, and there's a group of people, which I'll allude to in a moment, who are working really hard to bring all of these strategies together. And for those of you that may not be familiar with this plan, it is on Destination BC's website, or if you connect through with me, I'll be happy to provide you with a copy of that presentation. So from those plans, different destination management councils were formed. And you can see here, we all meet on a monthly basis, and it's a phenomenal group of people that are networking and getting together and working on all of our communities' behalves. So it's primarily a focus of destination management organizations. And you can see here, we have all of those regions within the Fraser Valley Regional District, but we've also extended out to include the City of Pitt Meadows. We have Maple Ridge and Langley City and Township also as part of that. We have representation from Vancouver Coast and Mountains, and with them, we're very fortunate that they've also brought some grant writers on board for us. So they come to the meetings as well. We have Indigenous Tourism BC attending, as well as the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Development and Innovation, and the Ministry of Environment. And last but by no means least, we have your very own David Urban, who joins us. And really, that's one of the reasons that I'm here. I'm here representing all of these organizations. But a couple of years ago, my counterpart from Tourism Chilliwack, Alison Coulthorpe, came in to request that we had some staff time to help us work through this project. So I'm here today to show you how well we are using his time. So I'll just start off with a little bit of an update on what Experience the Fraser is, so everyone's up to speed. Experience the Fraser is seen as a recreational, cultural and heritage project that will run along the Fraser River, starting in Hope and going all the way through to the Salish Sea. There are 550 kilometers of trails that have been identified, of which 47% are already in place. So we're nearly halfway there. So this is an easy win for us all. And the whole point of this is to really use it as a catalyst to encourage and strengthen economic development throughout all of the communities that this touches. It started back in 2008 with funding from the province, and they gave funding to yourselves and to your equivalent in Metro Vancouver to come up with a concept and an implementation plan. And those are forming the basis of the work that we are undertaking today. So in a nutshell, to read from the report, Experience the Fraser is an invitation to experience and explore the dynamic Fraser River from the corridor from Hope all the way through to the Salish Sea, to celebrate the spirit and the stories of its varied landscapes, its diverse communities, and rich natural and cultural heritage. We're very fortunate that that vision works so well today and aligns with both federal and provincial goals that are still in place today around active transportation, climate change, and reconciliation. So here's a little map. So we have it split into blue ways, which are the waterways, and green ways, which are the trail development. And some of those trails are already in place through existing networks. Some of them may be paved, some of them may be gravel, some of them may be grassed at the moment. But you can see there that there's quite an extensive network. And as part of the legacy of the Olympic Games back in 2010, it was decided that it would be really cool if we could create 5 circular routes that came off of the Fraser River to align with the 5 circles that are part of the Olympics. So for example, if we started a route in Hope, we could go through to Agassiz, cross over at the Rosedale Bridge, and then loop back round to Hope again. So we can see there are obviously a number of crossings that we will also include. Some of those have great on-off ramps for bikers and hikers. Other need some work, but that's fine. We are prepared to undertake that with your support and with working with the municipalities. So the black lines that you can see on this route indicate established routes already. Those trails are already in place. The orange ones are sections that we would like to see. And the yellow ones are interim routes where there isn't trail connectivity at the moment, but we've looked to create that. So it could be that rather than being a trail down by the river, we've gone back a little bit and we're using urban streets, the quieter ones, to connect in the meantime. So the main concept goals haven't changed either, and we're still working towards those. So we've got the connection from Hope to the Salish Sea, and looking also at including Vancouver Airport and BC ferries. And I would say now also Abbotsford Airport is a strong contender for us. To link thematic products and experiences all along the Fraser River. To develop enduring and committed partnerships. And we've already done that. The last 2 years have been phenomenal at connecting not only in this project, but getting everyone together on a number of pieces in sharing information and ideas. And then to build deepened connections with the river. Once the project is complete, we foresee this as being an exceptional destination for both residents and for tourists, to offer active transportation routes and to give opportunities for entrepreneurs to develop complementary services. So whether that's accommodations or river or land-based activities, or whether we're looking at food and beverage. And of course, there's a really important element, which is our opportunity to all learn about the history and the importance of the river to our First Nations communities. I'm going to skim over some of this because we've talked to some of this already, but in 2012, there were some pilot projects undertaken, of which Mission was actually one of them. We got a beautiful park down by the waterfront, which has been a great asset certainly for our community. In 2020 and 21, as part of the destination management strategy, we realized the importance of reprioritizing the Experience the Fraser route. So that's what we've been working on. And so far, as well as us meeting, we have been able to connect with 2 regional districts, 18 municipalities, Vancouver Airport, and over 24 First Nations communities to date. In 2022, and this bit blows my mind, we started working with a GIS specialist because we really wanted to ground truth what it was like. It's one thing seeing a black line on a map, but we needed to see for ourselves if that was actually all justified and was working well. So our GIS specialist has literally cycled from one end to the other. He's taken over 1,000 photographs. He has worked really hard looking at infrastructure that's in place, infrastructure that's missing, looking at where signage is already and where signage is needed. And I'll show you an example a little bit later on, but we look forward to being able to present this level of information on a community by community basis. So it should be really great. We also have been working with our grants specialist, thanks to Vancouver Coast and Mountains, to pursue a number of grant opportunities working with municipalities, and I'll show you some of those projects in a moment. For this year, we will continue with the funding, and we also really want to work hard on the signage piece. So, to give you an example of a project that we're working on, we've chosen Chilliwack as we're here this evening. So Tourism Chilliwack and the City of Chilliwack have been working on developing and recognizing key amenities for the Canyon to Coast Trail, and that's the name of the greenways for the Fraser River, is Canyon to Coast. They've come up with 25 ideas for wayfinding signs, and have also been looking at additional infrastructure, whether that's park benches or information kiosks or other relevant amenities. And they've also been working hard with the local nations to look at developing cultural interpretive signage. So you can see here that a lot of this will actually benefit Experience the Fraser as we move forward, as there is signage going all along the Vedder Greenway, and we will add in Experience the Fraser signage where appropriate along that route. So as I've said, the Canyon to Coast Trail is really a key component of this entire project. It aligns often with existing trails such as the Trans-Canadian or the Great Trail, as it now is. And so one of the big focuses now is looking at wayfinding signage. Not everybody is ready for wayfinding signage as yet. Some communities still need to develop trails, and we understand that and are happy to work with you at your pace. There's no rush here, but you need to get on it. As part of this, we have now, working with staff here, now got a complete signage package in place. So anybody that's interested in now adding signage, that work has all been undertaken. So here's an example of some of the projects, and I've added in New West because we do work collaboratively all the way along the route, and that's just an example of how that's coming to fruition. So there's funding come through for exhibits that will showcase and highlight Experience the Fraser. Chilliwack, as we've just said, have got the funding for interpretive wayfinding signage. Mission has got some new trail planning coming in for new trails along the route. Kent is updating some of the existing trails that it has, and Langley has that beautiful new arts, culture and heritage facility that's coming in at the moment. And this totals over $1.1 million. So I think you'll agree, when we all pull together, we really can do great things. We also need to acknowledge that there are bigger pieces at play that, whilst we're not largely involved in, we support fully. There's the Patello Bridge and the Massey Crossing. And then there's a lot of community opportunities as well. For example, not that I'm biased, but I do keep bringing it up, the Mission Revitalisation Master Plan for the waterfront. And also Hope has a vision of looking at the train trestle and creating an area for viewing the river over Highway 1 there. And my slides aren't moving forward. There we go. Nearly there, home stretch. So just to finish off on our next steps. So there are 2 pieces that we're really going to be focusing on. The first one is looking at signage, because we really feel now there are areas of the trail that are already established. And if we can introduce signage, we start to build awareness for our residents, for visitors, for cycling groups, for city staff and municipalities. And once the word gets out, then we feel that we'll be able to attract more people to the area and more funding opportunities. In order to assist with these next steps, we are putting together, as I mentioned earlier, very detailed community plans for each of you within your own municipality. And I won't get into all of this today, but it will include a full breakdown of where you have trail, if you have trail already, the number of kilometers of trail that are in place, the quality of those trails, where signage is already established, where we feel signage would benefit, and then an opportunity to look at future projects and to work with city staff and with councils to see where we go next. And the advantage of this is, one, we've got a really clear idea and definition for moving forward, but it also gives us the opportunity then, as funding becomes available, to look at these lists and to prioritize and on your behalf and with you and put forward for future funding. So we're about there now. I'll just finish off by saying, if you would like us at any time, either now to come and give this presentation to your councils, or you want to wait until we've got that detailed information for you and then come out and meet with council and staff, we are here to help, and we would love the opportunity to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Seeley, for your presentation. I see that Director Clute has a question.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I love transportation. I'm a frequent user, in full disclosure, of the Fraser Valley Experience the Fraser Trail, a 10-kilometer stretch between Jesperson and Ferry Road on multiple occasions throughout the week. My question for you, and in full disclosure, I'm a dairy farmer. I have land on either side of the dike. So we can anticipate that we will have more traffic as people begin to discover the fantastic trail system. How do we manage, and I know there's been some concern in the past, I think Boundary Bay had some negative media attention with urban and farming community traffic. For instance, my portion of the property, I use 300 meters of the dike to access land on the other side of the dike from one letdown to another letdown, and multiple occasions throughout the year, as we take our grass off, as we plant corn, as we take our corn off, and we have big tractors, big equipment. How do we manage potential conflict as the trail becomes more popular?
Yeah, one of the things that we're all working on as communities, if you notice, I called us destination management organizations, whereas before we used to be destination marketing organizations. So the focus used to be literally just on marketing and looking to draw people in for the economic benefits. But we're now looking at a much bigger picture. So since COVID, we've really reestablished ourselves to try and add value. So as part of this, we're looking at respectful travel. So we're ensuring that visitors and our local residents have messaging. We're trying to set expectations. We're looking at visitor management plans. So we're working on a number of pieces. So I think as each piece develops, it's up to us to work alongside you to look at setting those expectations. And I think for me, and hopefully I speak for many people, you know, that's part of what we love about coming out and recreating, is seeing our communities at work. And I think if we can set the right expectation and ground rules, we'll be good to go.
So if I could just have a follow-up to that. So can I count on signage being put in place that there is farm traffic that uses the dike from time to time?
I can't speak to that personally, but we can certainly bring that up to address. Absolutely. And that's not our only way of a method of connecting with people either. So we would look at other ways as well. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a bit of a list here, and I'm going to go through it in the order that I have on my screen in front of me. So I've got Director Castle.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Hi, Claire.
Hello.
Kind of picking up on the last point, within the electoral areas, of course, the dikes are on private property. What's the process? How are you going to work through that to get the consent and permission of those landowners?
Yeah, that's going to be a work in progress. And at any time, I'll leave David if he feels he has something to add to step in. But at the moment, that's why we're focusing on existing trails. But that work will go on in the background. I know from our area, we definitely have a number of areas where we've got a lot of work to do. But there are groups that are supporting that, and we'll do our best to work with you on those. Yeah.
Perfect. And if I could, is there any part of this that includes a proposed trail network along the Nokomin Island dikes? And I'm referring to a plan from the Mission Community Cycling Coalition.
I know the one.
And in their plan, they reference and link their proposal to this.
Yeah. David's coming up.
Mr. Irvin? We have too many people with mics on. Is that what's going on here? All right. Right now? No.
I feel like we're going to do karaoke now. Pick your song. Yeah.
Yeah, so the question around the Nokomin Island area, it's been part of the concept plan since the beginning. And we know the improvement districts have reservations, and rightfully so, around non-motorized use on the dike. We've reached out a number of times in the past, and we're respecting their wishes at this time. So at the moment, there will be gaps in the system, and that would be an identifiable gap right now. Is there a solution? Potentially, but through discussion, we could see where it goes. Thanks.
Yep, go ahead.
This is a question about food trucks or beverage trucks, coffee trucks. I know underneath the Abbotsford Mission Bridge, they're a great advocate of the trail and our park system. Is it just the cities have control of handing out permits, or does the regional district have anything to do with what can be put on? I know it's a lot of people. I talked to the lady down underneath the bridge and telling me where all these people come from, and they, like I say, they're a great advocate for our trail system. So I'm just wondering if there's designated spots that the district would be involved with the different cities to have that service for trail users.
It's a good question. I'm not aware of any that would be in our regional parks, I guess, but I'm not aware of any. But Ms. Kinnaman?
Similarly, I'm not aware of any. I've just looked to staff. I'm not sure if Mr. Danilus has any comments in terms of the locations of any kind of oversight that we would have in terms of food trucks in the regional district.
Thank you. Through the chair, regional districts don't have business licensing powers, and that's one mechanism for regulating and allowing food trucks. That's not a part of our regulatory toolbox. We do have zoning bylaws that govern land use, and we could look to our zoning bylaws for guidance on whether commercial uses like that would be permitted in parks. But I think the heart of the question is whether there are park areas that we make available to food trucks or concessions. And for that, maybe I'd pass it over to Ms. Barker.
Sure, Ms. Barker. I know the city of Chilliwack at the Vetter Park, we have some designated spots for food trucks and, power and services and that kind of thing. And I think we charge a bit of a fee there, but they're pretty popular. Ms. Barker?
Thank you. Food trucks are something that we've considered looking into for the Vetter River Campground, bringing in some extra revenue there, and possibly at some of the busier boat launches. But it's nothing that's been explored in depth at this point.
Good. Okay, Director Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question. I know on my calendar, I chair the Parks and Trails Committee for Chilliwack. And on Thursday morning, we're meeting with a firm out of Vancouver, Partner and Haws, H-A-W-E-S. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but they're managing a $750,000 grant that we received through the federal and provincial government for wayfinding cultural, historical information signs along the Vetter Greenway. Is that connected to this?
And so through the chair to Director Mercer, quite aware of that project that's happening on. And the analogy I use is the Fraser River is the main trunk of the tree. And what you have coming off the main trunk are the branches and the limbs. And those are other connecting trail systems, such as the Vedder River Greenway that connects into it. So should there be some dialogue between the two, I think it'd be beneficial. So the messaging is consistent all the way through. So they're more complementary systems at play right now.
Thank you. And to you, Mr. Chair, I know on that committee we have a regional district rep, and I'm hoping that you know, the interfaces between what was presented today and what we do in Chilliwack are obvious, because I think it would be a waste of money on our part to be doing something that's you know, counterproductive or intuitive to the bigger picture, which is the canyon to the Sailor Sea project.
I think Partner & Haas is the company that did a lot of the branding work and comms work for Tourism Chilliwack, and I think Experience or the Fraser Valley Group as well. So they'd be a well-known entity.
Yeah, and it's Tourism
Chilliwack.
Chair, it's Tourism Chilliwack that actually got the grant in partnership with the city. So I think it's aligned at least to that.
Great. Okay, Director Pranger, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Kloot, for bringing up the issue with farmers owning land on both sides of the dike. The District of Kent has gone into a pilot project of opening some of our dikes now, and we're almost into the end of the year that we've given it, but we still I'd like to learn more from anyone else who's experiencing the same issues so we can work together and make it feasible for farmers to continue what they need to do and have residents be and tourists alike be respectful of what farmers do. So if anybody's willing to pass and share information, I would be very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Pranger. Director Facio, go ahead. Thank you, Director Gibson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the energetic presentation. My question is, this whole experience, the Fraser, originated with the province. And so my question is a fairly simple one. Where's the province at now in terms of funding and planning Experience the Fraser?
Ms. Seeley or Mr. Urban?
I'll start off and then David can add to it. We do have ministries sitting at the table every month, and we are working with them on grant funding, and that's where we've seen a lot of the projects come to fruition. So they are definitely on board with that. I think as things develop, because we are aligning with many of the key principles that the province are looking to work towards around reconciliation, active transportation, and so on, there will be further opportunity as we move forward. And I don't know whether you want to add.
Sure. Take a mic when I can get it through the chair. Fair point. Now, what's changed is the political parties that are involved. So there's been a transition over the years. This came in, we have to go back to Claire's presentation where she spoke about the Olympics, and this was through the Premier Campbell's era. And then it morphed into kind of another period where we were trying to engage the province and build momentum behind it. And there's some sputtering. So can more be done? I think so. There is a memorandum of understanding that we have with the province around this, with the partnership. But it could certainly use a little more drive to re-engage with the province. I think the way to look at it is right now they're engaging through the Destination BC aspect.
Supplementary, if I may, Chair.
Go ahead.
We have government MLAs representing us now throughout much of the regional district. It would seem to me they would be advocates for us.
One of the things I recall back quite a few years ago, David and I went to Victoria as part of a bit of a road show for Experience the Fraser, and I think we might have even run into you there, Director Gibson, and did this presentation to both sides of the house, and there was lots of interest for sure at the time, but that once we had kind of exhausted the one-time grant funding that came through, there seemed to be not really a consistent approach in terms of how it was going to continue to be funded, but everybody really liked the idea. So one of the things that we did used to have was a political steering group that was involved with Experience to Fraser, and it kind of took the next level, took the action plan to the next level of advocacy. And I'm wondering, maybe that's something that the group wants to consider. I know at that time, our counterpart in Metro Vancouver on their Parks Committee came with us to Victoria, and you know, it was a full day, but I think it was well worth it. Certainly, it's a compelling project to talk about, and as you know, we've heard this evening, there's lots of interest in it. Director, let me check and see. I've got Director Horn. Go ahead.
A question and then a comment, Mr. Chair. The question is, could you repeat again where you work, Ms. Seeley? So I just want to proudly say how happy we are that we have your leadership in this industry and the way that you're tying everybody together in mission. And I wanted to build on the comments and questions of my colleagues around the table. Director Castle raised the question I was originally going to ask, and I don't think any of us are surprised to hear about the concern potentially around user conflicts, farming being only just one of them. For us in Mission, the route we're talking about has interface with industrial areas as well as our raceway. And so I wanted to suggest that perhaps at a later date, we hear a second presentation back telling the results of things like pilots and examples where we can share with farmers and other users what we've learned and what has been successful. And one more component, which you touched on a little, and that is examples of where First Nations partnerships have borne some fruit. I think what you're doing is exceptional. It will unfold incrementally, but I think we can catalyze it a bit by tying it to those partnerships and demonstrating that user conflicts have been effectively resolved and even embraced, as you said, in some cases. Let's tie it in and lean into the fact that you're seeing working farms or that sort of thing as you use these trails. Thank you.
Okay, we've got, I'll go to Director Siemens first.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm just thinking long term, and I guess I might as well just throw it wide open. In Europe, they have end-to-end, you know, across the UK, and I know even down in Oregon, you can go from along the coast. And I'm just wondering, is there any long-term to make this a real destination for people to be able to experience that and go from, you know, that type of accommodation? I know we have a real neat food culture being developed here. So just wondered, long term, are those things being talked about? Is that kind of on the radar for down the road?
Yeah, absolutely. The focus at the moment is on the greenways, but we see as this develops, really opening up for entrepreneurs to offer services that align. The Fraser River has the opportunity to become a world-class destination and really be one for the books. And so that's what we're working towards. Think big. We'll get there.
Thank you. And then Director Kloot.
Thank you. Again, this is fairly fresh in my mind, and I know I'm probably the closest impacted by the trail, and I love it. No problem with people using it respectfully. But another thing came to mind is one of the things we as farmers do. We allow hunters on our land to help reduce crop loss. We lost 30 acres of cover crop last year, and I won't eat duck and I won't shoot a duck, but there are people who hunt. And I also foresee that as potential conflict that could arise. So I think it's really important that we do have signage in place, and I hope you take that away and share that with your respective colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Director Barkman for a second, go ahead.
I spoke about this in 2008 when I first got elected, and I just heard the word boat launch. I think our side of the river is starving for a boat launch, and maybe Barb Roberts remembers this. I think they did an economic impact, airport, sports places, restaurants, hotels. Is a boat launch, and I think it was talked about underneath the Mission Bridge. And the reason it's got to this point now, it used to be the city park, and now when the GVRD gave everything over to FVRD, how much control do we and do you see that type of facilities in the near future?
Ms. Kinnaman or Mr. Urban?
Yeah. All right. Thank you, through the chair. Yes, you're right. There has been talk of a boat launch on the south side in Abbotsford there for a number of years. And at one time, the city of Abbotsford was interested in pursuing a feasibility study to look into whether this was a possible reality. A decision was made not to pursue that avenue, and that's where we're standing today.
And Director Adamo.
Thanks very much, through the chair, to our guest. Just clarifying how far up the Fraser this route goes. Does it go as far as Yale and through Hell's Gate, or does it just start at Hope and go towards the Salish?
Mr. Urban or Ms. Seeley?
Through the chair to Director Adamo, thank you. This project is from Hope to the Salish Sea. The name Canyon to Coast Trail is more of a tagline, and it's used as kind of the entry point, Hope, for the start of the canyon. So that's the terminus at this point.
Thank you.
I recall there was some talk about eventual connection into the Gold Rush Trail, and maybe that was just talk at the time, but there's certainly some action on that front as well. So might be definitely discussions in the future, Director Adamo. Any other questions? We've talked out. Good to go. Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Seeley, for your presentation. I don't know if you know this, but we got to fine Director Horn. Every time you said mission, we get to fine him $5. So we all made money tonight. That's great. Okay, next item.
Next item is 5.1. We have the draft Fraser Valley Regional District Board meeting minutes of December 15th, 2022.
It's moved by Director Pranger, seconded by Director Schall. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, the item carries. Next item.
Section 6 is the committee minutes for information and matters arising. Happy to separate any of those out, but otherwise they're just for information.
Thank you. Any questions on any of the minutes? Seeing none. Next item.
7.1 is request for access to records and information under the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Again, an information item, but staff would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions on this? Don't see any. Next item.
7. I'm sorry. I think we actually have someone on screen.
Sorry, Director Davidson. I missed you there. Yeah. Oh,
I think he's got some. He's been having some.
Try
audio.
that one more time.
There we go.
Thank you. So, thank you, Chair. Just through the chat staff. I remember when this discussion for the $10 application fee came up, there was some debate on it. And from the report, it's not really clear as to, maybe it's too early, as to whether that $10 fee has had an impact one way or the other. And sometimes I do wonder if the cost of collecting $10 is covered by $10 sometimes. I'm just wondering if staff have any additional insights above what's in the report as to the impact of that $10 fee on FOI requests. Thank you.
Ms. Kinnaman.
Sure. I think I'll just turn things right over to the report author, Jamie Van Ness.
Ms. Van Ness.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Davidson. So that $10 application fee that legislation enabled us to put in late last year. In speaking with all of our staff, we haven't had any comments. We haven't had any questions. We haven't really seen any impacts as a result of implementing those fees. The request they did spike at the beginning of last year and then kind of tapered off towards the end of the year. But I don't believe that that's a reflection of the implementation of that $10 fee. And in fact, just in January, so in the first 25 days of this year, we've received 10 requests. So it flexes, goes up and down, kind of similar to building permits. That we just never really know what to expect, but certainly we haven't seen any impacts from that $10 fee.
Right, thank you.
Director Castle.
Thank you. Through the chair and staff, I'm wondering, do we know the percentage of the requests that come from media? And was there any discussion about waiving the $10 fee for media requests?
Miss Kinnaman, Miss Van Ness, sorry.
So currently, I wouldn't say that any of the requests have been impacted by any media requests. Now, as far as the $10 fee goes, it is a straight across the board $10 fee. However, as an FOI head, I do have the ability to waive fees in cases where it's a hardship case where somebody can't afford the fees and they need those records. But certainly there hasn't been any media requests.
Thank you. And if I may, do we with the impacts of implementing the fee, do we have any data as to the impact on the number of media requests that we are now receiving since the $10 fee has come in?
I could answer that by saying I have no data before and no data after.
Okay, thank you.
Director Horn.
Well, it's the second time this evening that Director Castle has asked the same question I was going to ask. I have read in the media recently that FOI requests are down, and I know that one of our local reporters is of the opinion that that's partly because of these fees. And I wondered the exact same two questions in terms of those impacts and whether or not we had that authority. My understanding of this was that we really wanted to do two things, which was sort of avoid specious, overflowing attempts to sort of get back at the region or municipalities by these requests. That really in no way impacts the media ones as far as I can see. And really, I think any appearance that we are doing something to impede the media only undermines our credibility and transparency. And so I don't know whether this is something that deserves to be put in the form of a motion, but I, speaking individually as director, would like to see the answer to those questions in a more formal way and contemplate whether or not there's work to be done to refine the policy. If it's not impacting media, that changes the equation. And if there is already the discretion to make that exclusion for established media, love for us to see potentially of putting that into some sort of policy. So I'll leave it for other directors or perhaps to the chair, to Ms. Kinnaman, whether or not that can be contemplated as staff direction. But I would really appreciate having hard answers to those questions at a future meeting and then contemplating whether or not we might want to look at the policy now that it's been here for a year.
Ms. Kinnaman?
Sure. Through the chair to Director Horn, I can speak to this a little bit. And I think that one of the considerations to remember is that many record requests are routinely releasable and don't actually require an FOI. And it has been my experience since I've been here almost 10 years now that any media requests that we get for information most often are provided directly to the media and don't require an FOI in the first place. And so that may very well be the case for us. Unlike some other levels of government or other jurisdictions, perhaps the media doesn't have the same level of inquiry that's happening at the Fraser Valley Regional District because so much of our material is routinely releasable. However, with that said, certainly my recommendation would be we could continue to monitor it over this year, and then we'll bring it back to you after another year of accepting the fees and see where we're at in terms of any feedback received from the media and if there's been any negative impacts associated with it.
Following up, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
That seems reasonable to me, and I would invite members of the community, as you said, Ms. Van Ness, we haven't heard from the community. And so if they have feedback, they should reach out to their local director and express what their preferences would be. But thank you for that answer.
Thank you. Don't see any other lights on. Or
Davidson?
Director Davidson, sorry. Yeah, on a follow-up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So thanks to Director Horn, you sort of jarred something in my memory about the specious FOI request angle to this, and the thinking that the $10 fee was going to reduce that without trying to relive an earlier debate. And I don't really know if staff can make that distinction as to what's spacious and what isn't. They're all valid in their own way. But for any sort of future report, if some sort of commentary from staff about the nature of the request, if that's changed before and after, for me, it's just basically, is this $10 worth the effort of collecting it? If we're collecting money for something that we didn't have to collect before, it's not really offsetting the cost in any substantial way. It's only just slowing people down. So that's basically where my concern's coming from going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't see any other lights on. We're okay. Or Ms. Van Ness, did you have any other comments on that, or you're okay?
Through the chair to Director Davidson, I think one way I could answer that is just to say that we typically don't have, I would say most of our FOI requests are routine. They wouldn't be repetitive in nature or problematic otherwise, that they would just be just regular FOI requests.
Okay. Right, we're all good. Next item.
Next is 7.2. We have nomination for BC representative on Federation of Canadian Municipalities Board of Directors. There is a motion for your consideration.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Director Facio, second by Director Clute. Discussion. Don't see any. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The item carries. Next item.
7.3 is the Human Resources Committee. There's a motion for your consideration.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Ross, second by Director Gill. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Item carries. Next item.
7.4 is the 2023 holiday closure of the FBRD corporate offices.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Clute, second by Director Johnson. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Item carries. Next item.
8.1 is the Cultus Lake North Wastewater Treatment Plant Integrated Project Delivery General Contractor. There is a motion for your consideration.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Dixon, seconded by Director Siemens. Discussion. Director Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's really great to see this on the agenda, and I'm pretty excited about it. From what I've heard about this IPD process, that has been a really powerful way to begin to work on this again. My question really is, I have two. Just a little bit of what is the park board update involvement on this, as well as the next steps.
Sure. Through the chair to Director Dixon, in terms of park board update involvement, I'm assuming you're wondering if the park board is a part of this process, and the answer to that is yes. They are a participant at that table as part of the IPD project team. In fact, I think it was last week, we had a bit of a kickoff meeting, and the park board was represented at that very first meeting and is very supportive of this process, an IPD process.
You had another question?
And then what can we expect for the next steps?
Sure. Sorry about that. With that, I'll just turn things over to Sterling Chan, who is leading this project and can speak to once this, assuming that this motion passes, what those next steps might look like.
Mr. Chan.
Thank you. So assuming that this motion does pass, the next step would be what's called project validation. So over the next 9 weeks, we would be meeting 2 days per week with our project team. So the contractor, all the project team on the FBRD side, as well as our design consultant, at which point we'd be doing all of our target value design, value engineering, basically coming up with a project that can be validated And then after that 9 weeks time, we'd be bringing it back to the board for basically approval to go ahead and build it.
Thank you. No other questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any? The motion passes. Get on to work. Next item.
Thank you, Chair Lum. So item 8.2 is a covenant to tie 2 lots for sale at 4108 and 4118 Slessy Road in Electoral Area E.
Thank you. That's moved by Director Makahonic and seconded by Director Popov. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Item carries. Next item.
9.1 is the 2023 grant and aid request for the Fraser Canyon Hospice Society in Electoral Area B.
Thank you. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Director Castle, second by Director Adamo. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Item carries. Next item.
Next item is 10.1, which is the Fraser Valley Regional District Director's Remuneration Bylaw, number 1690.
And thank you, Ms. Kinnaman. Before we begin, I want to declare a potential conflict of interest on this, just because it does involve discussion around the chair. And even though it's applicable to the next term and not myself, I want everybody to be able to speak openly and freely on this. So ask Director Ross to take over. Also, I need to refill my coffee.
Thank you. Did you have any more comments, Ms.
No, so we've introduced the item and we would just be looking for a motion for consideration.
Director Horn.
Move option 2.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
And it's just there's a motion for consideration. So there's 3 motions. First, so it would be first reading.
So just to clarify, so those 3 motions are essentially no, these are not options. So, okay, I think maybe Ms. Kinnaman, if you can clarify. So this process is that we would have to, no matter what we decide, because this is based on, I believe, just status quo and for the future. It doesn't include identifying potential for chair remuneration as identified in the report, correct? Or was there something else?
Sure, I'll be happy to speak to that. So this item was brought forward to the Regional and Corporate Services Committee, and the recommendation that came forward was option 2 in the original report, was that the Fraser Valley Regional District Board give 3 readings and adoption to the bylaw, which included reconsideration of the remuneration structure for the position of chair. The report identified that in the past review, it hadn't really been considered, or we're not able to find the consideration of the role of having to chair the RACS committee. And really just looking at the structure of the pay and the expectations of the role of chair, we put forward that option to consider that you may want to increase that. But given the fact that you just elected the chair into that position and that individual took that role, understanding what the remuneration was going to be set out to be, to make it a little less awkward for everyone, we recommended that you would make it effective for the next election of chair, which happens in November of each year. The other recommendation, and this is based on the UBCM guidelines for board and council remuneration, is with respect to conducting these remuneration reviews in the first place. The current bylaw for the FVRD recommends reviewing it in the January of each year after an election, which is what we're doing here tonight. However, the UBCM guidelines recommend that you would do it at least 1 year prior to an election. And so, again, it does create a little bit of awkwardness when you're reviewing your own remuneration just a couple of months after being elected. So what I have recommended as a change to the bylaw is that we would come back and we would review the entire remuneration package no later than October of 2025, which would coincide with 1 year prior to the next election. So that is the recommendation that your Regional and Corporate Services Committee put forward, was to update the chair's remuneration, as well as bring this back in 2025 for another look.
So the chair's remuneration is part of these motions. Okay, thank you. Dr. Horn?
My apologies, Madam Chair. I forgot that you weren't at the RACS committee.
I wasn't. No, sorry.
That's why I was.
I got kind of thrown into this cold.
The motion is option 2 from RACS. So
Okay.
I'll move the motion. Motion number 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Lawlen. Any other comments or questions? No. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried.
And then motion number 2.
Moved by Director Facio, second Director Clute. All in favor? Any opposed? None carried.
And motion number 3.
Moved by Director Popov and seconded by Director Mercer. All in favor? Any opposed? None carried. If we could have Chair
Wonderful.
Lund back, please.
Yes, we'll welcome Chair Lund back into the room.
Oh, perfect. I wouldn't be surprised.
So Chair Lund, we're at item 10.2, which is the Fraser Valley Regional District Dewdney Community Water System Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1684.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman, and thank you, Director Ross, for doing that. Do I have a mover and a second?
So moved.
Moved by Director Castle, second by Director Siemens. Discussion. This is on motion number 1. Go ahead, Director Castle.
Well, Area G is on the agenda, so I got to speak about it, and I would like to speak enthusiastically in favor. This is a wonderful new restaurant in downtown Dewdney, the Wheels Restaurant. If you're looking for a fantastic place for lunch and where you might see most of the Area G business being done, you might want to stop at Wheels Restaurant in Dewdney. They've been having severe trouble with their well. It actually resulted in the restaurant being closed for a couple of weeks. So we're very excited to see them having an opportunity to tie into the Dewdney community water system.
Sorry, what was the name of that restaurant again, Director Castle?
Wheels Restaurant.
Okay, sorry. And thank you. Any other comments or questions from board directors? Hearing none on motion number 1, all in favor. Opposed, if any, the item carries. On motion number 2, mover and a seconder, Director Castle, seconded by Director Dixon. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, the item carries. Next item.
10.3 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Vedder River Campground Amendment Bylaw number 1689.
Okay, we've got the first motion, and this is all with the exception of the City of Abbotsford, who are in this service. So do I have a mover and a seconder?
Move option 1.
It's moved by Director Facio, second by Director Popov. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, item carries. Motion number 2, moved by Director Popov, seconded by Director Horn. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, item carries. And motion number 3, it's moved by Director Pranger, second by Director Dixon. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, the item carries. Next item.
10.4 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1681 to assign zoning to 54370 Bridal Falls Road in Electoral Area D.
Thank you. It's moved by Director Dickey, seconded by Director Johnson. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, item carries. Next item.
10.5 is the Fraser Valley Regional District Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1680 for a 14-lot subdivision at 9868 Thompson Road in Electoral Area D.
Thank you. Moved by Director Dickey, seconded by Director Johnson. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor. Opposed, if any, item carries. Next item.
11.1 is the Harrison Mills Neighborhood Plan. There's a motion for your consideration.
Thank you. That's moved by Director Wardenberg, seconded by Director Dixon. Discussion. Director Wardenberg.
First of all, it's been a long process to get this far. Thanks to staff and the general public for participating. It's been a year now, 5 different meetings. And I look forward to the next phase. I just have one question. How long is this process servicing going to take, or how long is it anticipated to take? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kinnaman.
Sure. We'll just turn things over to our Director of Planning and Development, Graham Danilus.
Mr. Danilus.
Well, thank you, Chair. We are anticipating wrapping up the project, bringing a plan to the board for consideration in the fall of this year.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? No, we're good. I'll call the question. All in favor, opposed if any. The item carries. Next item.
Next is 11.2. It's an information item on the implementation of the secondary dwellings in electoral areas policy. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from board directors? Okay, I see Director Horn. Go ahead.
Just a question to you, Mr. Chair and staff. Mission's in the process right now of doing data collection on this very subject, and just wondered whether or not regional district staff we're interested in reaching out to them when they have their data back to see what it might reveal in terms of policy.
Ms. Kinnaman?
Again, I think we'll just turn that over to Mr. Danilus.
Mr. Danilus.
Yes, thank you through the chair to Director Horn. Absolutely. Would be very interested in reaching out to our colleagues in the planning department, but we'll do that.
Great. Any other questions? Information item? Nope. Next item.
11.3 is the 2022 Mosquito Control Program year-end report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions? Director Mercer, no questions? Okay, you're good. Thank you. Next item.
11.4 is the FVRD Fire Department Service Awards. Again, an information item and lots of deserving volunteers in all of our communities.
Absolutely. Any comments or questions on this item? Director Castle, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't have any questions. I just like to make a comment, and I have spoke to staff about this, but I just want to address it in this forum. I've asked that directors, especially in the electoral areas, that we're aware when there's service awards, milestones. It came to my attention through the community that we had a 25 and a 35 year, and I would have loved to have been given a heads up on that before they received their honors. So the fact that I wasn't there, I need to ask: were there any photos taken when they received their pins?
Ms. Kinnaman.
Through the chair to Director Castle. There were no photos taken at that particular event. I would say that many volunteers in the community are a little bit camera shy and a little bit reticent to come before the board for these formal kinds of presentations. One of the challenges that we have found over the last couple of years with respect to these awards is that the award year happens, but unfortunately there's a bit of a time delay in terms of the actual hardware being delivered to us from the organizations that bestow them. So there will be an event where we will have the hardware, and we will certainly make arrangements to have photo opportunities with those individuals. But we really don't like the year passing without acknowledging them at least in some way. And so we do apologize that you weren't invited to that quiet little luncheon at Christmas time where the fire chiefs and assistant chiefs come together to celebrate another year. But once those pins and medals and the rest come in, we will make sure that that happens.
Thank you. Director O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. Through the chair, to staff, with respect to this award presentation or this program, of course, Sunshine Valley Volunteer Fire Department has been around for some 45 years and many great members, although we're not a participant through the regional district. Is there any budget that I have or that I can create to help recognize them through the regional district for their service? Thanks.
Ms. Kinnaman.
Yes, through the chair to Director Adamo. There is actually a policy in place with respect to electoral area directors recognizing community volunteers. As a matter of fact, our staff are just getting ready to reach out to the EA directors to talk about reinvigorating that program now that we seem to be through the worst of COVID and difficult times in our communities. I dare say that I should be knocking on wood at this moment. However, that program was significantly curtailed and challenged over the last couple of years. So I expect you'll be hearing from our staff in the next couple of weeks here on that program and what that event might look like.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Other questions? Don't see any. Next item.
Next item is 13.1, which is an item for information and correspondence. It's a letter from the City of Mission. Happy to answer any questions, or perhaps the sitting director would like to answer those questions.
Thank you. Not that I'm counting, that's another $5, but any comments or questions on this item? Director Horn.
Thank you. I advised the board last time that a letter like this was going out. I just will keep, I think this is one of those letters where it may not be worth the cost of the printer ink in terms of what results it will deliver. But so long as the disparity in pricing between Maple Ridge and which is of course the easternmost border of the Metro Vancouver region, and ours disappears, this may be of interest to this table. Because that 18.5 cent surcharge should show dividends for people in our region. And if we're not going to get the benefit of it as a revenue source, then it should exist. So I will apprise this board of any replies I hear or lack thereof.
Thank you, Director Horn. Director Damo, you've got your hand up. Just want to check in. Nope. Okay. Other questions or comments on our correspondence? Nope. Next item.
Moving down to reports by board directors.
Thank you, directors, for your opportunity. Director Horn, go ahead.
Thank you. Something of significance that I want to report on is the gathering of the Hatzic Watershed Table for its second meeting. It was attended by Fraser Valley Regional District's Castle, Davidson, and myself, as well as the chair and CAO Kinnaman, Lacamo First Nation representatives, technical staff, and representatives from both the MLA for Mission Abbotsford, as well as Dewdney Area Improvement District. And probably the most important in terms of getting momentum on the very wide range of things that need to be addressed in the watershed was the presence of people acting on behalf of the new Ministry of Climate Readiness and Emergency Management. I'm not going to report in a lot more detail about what's going on because I think the group agrees that at this point things are highly in the nascent stages. And I would describe what's going on at our table as building of trust and understanding the issues that are there. But the meeting concluded with a clear understanding that we need to meet again in short order and keep the work moving forward. And I know we have a lot of members of the various communities that are part of that Hatzic Prairie and Hatzic Watershed who are keenly interested in what's going on, and we will keep folks informed as it does progress. But I think we had a step forward at that most recent meeting in terms of a clear understanding of the significant challenges we're facing and the need to take a collective approach. So thank you for everybody who's participated in that, and we will continue that work.
Thank you, Director Horn. Director Castle, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by giving a shout out to Gerard Bars for his 25 years and Curtis Stevens for his 35 years of service to our North Fraser Fire Department, as well as to all of the folks who volunteer to keep our communities north of the Fraser safe. Last year, North Fraser responded to nearly 500 calls for service with a crew of about 40 volunteers. A large majority of the calls for service are motor vehicle accidents along Route 7, so please, next time you're enjoying the scenic 7 highway, please remember to slow down and pay attention. The hydro poles on that stretch of road seem to like to jump out at motorists, so please be careful and slow down. And I'd like to once again thank our volunteer first responders. I'd like to echo Director Horn's comments about the Hatzic Watershed Recovery Table meeting. I was encouraged by the direction of the discussions around the table and look forward to upcoming conversations to continue working to find solutions to the impacts of flooding in the watershed. And I especially want to give a shout out and thank you to Chair Lum for taking time out of his busy schedule to attend and support the EA directors at this meeting. I had an opportunity to walk along the foreshore of the Fraser River on the easternmost end of Nakoman Island on January 14th with an agricultural landowner who also happens to be the chair of the Nacoman Island Improvement District. I observed how the river has eroded approximately 15 meters of foreshore along his property and in the last 18 to 24 months. I was shocked to see that the river's edge is now approximately 40 meters from the base of the Nacoman Island dike, and that there is now water from the river spilling over the edge of the foreshore up to the base of the dike during high water times. The 2015 Golder Associates report analyzing the 35 kilometers of dike improvements needed to protect the Nacoman Island from catastrophic flooding estimated costs to complete all projects would have been $100 million. In 2017, based on a design report, the Improvement District was advised of the potential for an erosion arc that would threaten the integrity of the Nacoman Island dike within 17 to 30 years. The water in the Fraser River has now reached the level that the report anticipated it would reach in 17 to 30 years. There is not currently a design or work plan in place to armor this part of the foreshore to address the 2023 spring freshet, and I'm worried. I'm worried that the report was correct and that if a work plan to armor this part of the foreshore is not implemented soon, the Nacoman Island dike at the most upstream point of Nacoman Island will be compromised, putting the entire north side of the river at risk in the very same spot that the river breached its banks in 1948. I've reached out to Minister Alexis, whose riding includes Nacoman Island, as well as the Camel First Nation, and have asked our FVRD staff to engage in this matter with me with the intent of alerting decision makers. I hope to have the support of this board to move this urgent matter up the chain before it's too late. I'd like to thank Chair Lum and Seo Kinnaman and our engineering staff for their help over the past couple of weeks to advocate with me on behalf of the residents of Area G and the Fraser Valley. I look forward to seeing a solution for the residents of the north side of the river soon. And I'd like to note that yesterday I received information from the Improvement District that one of the authors of the Golder's report has in fact been out to Nacoman Island and has confirmed the bank of the Fraser River has retreated approximately 27 meters between June 2019 and July 2022, which was described by the author as a significant change and not necessarily a result of the 2021 atmospheric event. It was also noted that the previously placed bank protection works is being directly impinged by the Fraser River flows, and it appears that some riprap that was previously placed to strengthen the foreshore has been dislodged. So not only has a large erosion arc been formed in a relatively short amount of time, but that erosion is now chewing through bank protection downstream. Once again, I look forward to seeing a solution for the residents of the north side of the river and hope that this board will support us in moving this up the chain.
Thank you, Director Castle. Just contemplating what action you'd like from the board. Is that forthcoming? Are you planning on bringing in a notice of motion forward at a later date, or would you like to suggest that this board draft a letter under the signature of the chair, just identifying some of the concerns that you've raised tonight on behalf of this board and get it sent off to the relevant ministries, at least as maybe a first part of the advocacy?
Yes, I think that any and all advocacy in the quickest amount of time possible, as the freshet, we're months away. I think anything is useful. I will note that I am encouraged by the work that we've done over the last couple of weeks to bring this to the attention of decision makers, but I would love to have the support of a letter going to the ministry.
Okay, I'm going to take that as a motion. Do you have a seconder to Castle? It's seconded by Director Horn. Any other commentary or questions on the item? Director Pranger.
Director Castle, through you to Director Castle and everyone else, this is becoming a major problem all along the river. We are threatened. The Seabird Island loses land every year. They are not protected. We are not protected. We are losing ground all the time. And it's time there was an authority that said, we have to do something soon. before we have a disaster on our hands.
Thank you. Other comments? Director Gill, I see you've got your light on.
Thank you to the chair. I guess just an update. I have an update. So.
Oh, is this an update?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Let's deal with the motion on the floor before us. So, anyone else like to speak to the motion? Director Davidson to the motion.
Thank you, Chair. Just supporting the motion, but it seems that we have challenges sometimes with the ability of improvement districts in general to fulfill their mandate without essentially other orders of government, such as ourselves, getting involved in advocating on their behalf. And this just looks like another instance of it. We got to do what we got to do, but it just comes down to improvement districts just being fundamentally challenged to fulfill their own mandate. And I don't know what the answer is, but I think I'd like to see that become part of the message if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Davidson. That's a good point. Director Siemens, yeah.
Thank you. I'm not against the motion. I think the challenge, and we have 3 erosion arcs on the Abbotsford side that I believe we received a significant amount of money for 5 years ago, and we are still in consultations, and that price has now probably more than doubled, and we don't have any conclusion as to who's going to pay that difference. We are still arguing about whose responsibility are these dikes, and I believe the province has put out a paper. My concern with the province's paper is that it doesn't necessarily look at the infrastructure for food security that we have. The Coleman Island will be no different than Sumas Prairie, which is a different issue, but somewhat affected by the Fraser. And so the concerns that we have are very much in alignment with what has been raised here tonight. So I support the motion, but I'm just wondering, I know we've got the Fraser River, the Fraser Basin Council. We seem to be advocating, and I know that the province would like to move some of this along. The challenge is that we have I don't know what let's send this letter, no doubt, but where are we at with the Fraser Basin Council and even as a regional district? We've seemed to be studying things to death, and I don't know, I guess I'm just expressing a frustration more than I am anything else at this point. So
fair point. And absolutely hear you, Director Siemens. And you know, I think it's something we could go back to the Fraser Basin Council and indeed probably keep tracing that back further through to the province of British Columbia, through the BC flood strategy, and some of the commentary in the intentions paper and some of the work that they've started to do on that. You know, I think unfortunately we're in a bit of a period of time right now where nobody seems to want to grab the bull by the horns and start to do the work that's necessary. And unfortunately, it's going to be our communities and the communities along the Fraser that continue to kind of take it on the chin because each year that goes by, the river creeps closer to the diking infrastructure that's there. I've been told by provincial staff working on the BC flood strategy that that answers are forthcoming and that funding is forthcoming. There was another opening of a federal program last number of weeks ago, and there's indication that you know, the province is taking a serious look at their responsibility around diking. There was lots of commentary, I know that you're aware of, throughout the atmospheric river event, both from the public safety minister and the premier at the time, that perhaps the transfer of responsibility of diking over to municipalities who are far less kind of equipped to handle that large responsibility. So I unfortunately we didn't see that followed up with dump truck loads full of money, which is what it's going to take. It's in the billions of dollars, the infrastructure deficit on some of these pieces of infrastructure. So it's a significant challenge for sure. Director Horn.
First, a question before a comment in terms of shaping the motion. So through the chair to staff, do we, either through regional district staff or through Fraser Basin Council, have some sort of database that indicates what are, this is the wrong word because they're not hot spots, they're probably weak spots, I guess, the most critical spots in the dikes along the Fraser in the region? Do we have any sense of that at all other than those that have come anecdotally from citizen reports?
There was a diking study that was completed by the province and as part of one of the first phases of the Lower Mainland flood strategy. So they did do an analysis of dikes and the ones that were didn't meet the current design criteria. So I think that data is there.
How recent would that have been?
It's fairly recent. Yeah, like last number of years.
So I think because we're hearing this, and I thank Director Castle for raising it with one specific example in mind, but I'm hearing from others as well. And I think the letter needs to not only ask for quick action on these specific spots, but that there be essentially some oversight in the short term to act on all of those that are listed in the highest priority. And I think it needs to be made clear that the freshet's 4 months away. And these are not projects that, as Director Siemens has said, can withstand one more season so that we can further research. You know, we clearly stand to lose not just food security, homes, the expenses, of course, related to cleanup and evacuation. You know, we need, I think, in the strongest terms, to ask for folks to go out and verify that we're acting in those places that were identified in recent analysis, or send somebody to genuinely fly the dike and look for where there have been changes.
Director Castle, another comment.
Yes, thank you. And just to tie in comments from Director Davison and Director Siemens, in fact, the reason that the regional district is involved in this particular situation is because there was monies awarded 5 years ago from the province to the improvement district, and it was determined at that time that the improvement district did not have the capacity to manage a project of this size. So here we are now advocating, and almost now there's a perception in the community that the regional district's holding on to this money and why and the river's coming. And in fact, as Director Siemens alluded to, you know, I wouldn't even call them discussions. Pleas have been made from our staff here at the regional district over and over and over and over again to please let us do the work to save the dike. And you know, there's policy talking about not hardening the foreshore, but we can look at other examples up and downstream where foreshore has been hardened by riprap. So the spirit of the letter, as Director Horn is talking about, it needs to be a holistic approach to this, that there's a whole bunch of money sitting in accounts that's not being used and the water's coming. So we need to move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Pranger, you had one.
Then when you get approval, then it's a season for either the sturgeon or and we just move from year to year without accomplishing works that require doing. As Director Siemens said, they've had this money sitting there, but there's never a final connection between and even the money's promised after the atmospheric river, $5.1 billion. We got what in our letter, it said an initial funding amount. but that initial funding amount was last February. And we have been in discussion since then with no further response from the federal government at all. Frustrating.
Certainly, yeah, I certainly hear the frustration from directors, and you know, I think it's well founded. I think, you know, personally, the province is finding itself in a bit of a tough spot with a lot of competing interests, a lot of plates that they've got to keep spinning up in the air. We haven't spoken tonight about different First Nation Indigenous projects and the Helix Kakai and the EPS, Emergency Planning Secretariat work that's done around looking at watershed flooding and impacts. And unfortunately, I think, you know, as just going back to my earlier comments, somebody needs to grab the bull by the horns, and I think that likely that will be the province that needs to do so. So I think we're talked out on this one, and I'd like to get Director Castle his letter, but I think we've got some other good stuff to add on to that as well. And if I don't see anyone else, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? If any, the item carries unanimously. Next. Oh, sorry, and we're still on reports. Maybe we should just change this to airing our grievances time here. I think. Yeah. Next report, Director Gill. I'm going to go back.
Thank you, Chair. I'll brighten this up a little bit. 2021, the province approved Mission's request for reclassification as the City of Mission from the District of Mission. With this reclassification came an opportunity to refresh the existing identity and brand, one that reflected the current community and the values and the aspirations that Mission has. So on Monday, Mission Council launched its new visual identity and platform. In that identity and platform, there's many things, and one of them included a new logo, which is a Western red cedar, a symbol of strength, resilience, renewal, and growth, which will replace our current logo. And also in that was also a brand essence called Hey Neighbor. It's not a tagline, but it helps pull together the brand in a clear, defining soundbite. It's something that resonates with every mission person, and they really know what it means. So Mission will be having many events celebrating the launch of our new brand and platform. And so please be on the lookout on our website for like events like Shine Bright or a Hey Neighbor block party. And the only thing required to enter is you have to say Mission.
Yeah, well done, Director Gill. Director McIlhonic, go ahead.
Thank you. So we've had some issues out in Area E with rural homelessness and abandoned camps, and large amounts of garbage, environmental concerns, fire concerns. December 28th, there was a large cleanup, and Global News came out, did an interview, did a follow-up interview with Vancouver Sun. It's a large amount. I don't have the exact numbers here with me, but huge amount of garbage, over $1,000. The tipping fees, I think it was, I don't even know how much the metal the next day that was got out. Volunteers. Ministry of Forests did pay for some equipment to come out, but it was a 2-day huge initiative. Since then, there's been, and I think it went public as well, there was and I just happened to come across it going for a drive at the right time. There was a pretty serious altercation between someone that has been living rough on the river, experiencing homelessness, and a fisherman, and police involvement, and it was pretty traumatic for the fisherman, and I was able to be there, and then the police came and do some mediation. But I think these things are going to be happening more and more. Today, met with a stakeholders group, Krista Rolick and the Indigenous Policing, put together a community stakeholders group for the Chilliwack River Valley with rural homelessness and camps and abandoned camps. So it's well represented. And I think coming together locally is good. After the December 28th and 29th media, what happened was I had a call from Ravi Kalan, the BC Minister of Housing. I know Ravi from before, and wanted to meet, and I invited Chair Lum and MLA Padden attended, and we were able to talk and about some possible solutions, interministerial. I mean, there are documents, and there are plans, and there are documents about working together with ministries, but it's not really being followed. And I mean, just coming newer into my role, I've lived out there 32 years. I've worked in resource sectors with being the executive director of the BC Wildlife Federation for many years. So, you know, I know that there's many different ministries. It's complex. So today was really good, but there does need to be a bigger picture, kind of a intersect, like from the different ministries, and we talked about building possibly pilot projects of putting in strategy kinds of tables here locally. And we think, and in our meeting today, that because of the geography of the area E, Chilliwack River Valley, it would be a good place to start for doing some of this work. So we're gonna go forward on that. So I'm hopeful, and we were hoping to hear from Minister Callan
Not that he
earlier.
was counting, but he did commit a week.
He did, and I talked today anyway, and he's found it a little more challenging to have all the different ministries get together, is what I've heard. But he's working on it, is what I've heard. So we'll give him another week or two. Yeah. So it's just we're one road in, one road out. I mean, fire hazards, environmental hazards. I mean, this is serious. So, we have over 5,000 recreational users come out. We're having altercations with people. So, yeah, it's a big concern. So, working on that. And then something else that I was able to do with Graham Daniluz was meet with 6 households that have been impacted because of the slides and flooding, and talking to them about path forward. And then I'll be following up with that. But really dire circumstances, and I really do hear about the erosion. And I mean, Chilliwack River Valley, there's quite a stretch there. So I mean, with climate events, we're seeing a lot of flooding, slides, erosion, and then drought. I mean, we're up against it, all of us. So, it'd be nice to get some provincial help, that's for sure. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Director McIlhenny. Director Dixon.
Oh, thank you. Seems to have I jumped the line here, but anyway,
it
just
quick changes on mine. I don't know if this is
just a quick update on the business waste up in Columbia Valley. That I now have weekly updates with with the reps from the Ministry of Environment and the ALC, and with our MLA. And a couple of weeks ago, Ministry of Environment sent a very detailed letter to the Fraser Valley Renewables, just outlining, it was 2 pages, all the steps that are required, that they are required to do at this time to even begin to get into compliance. That was followed up with an Agricultural Land Commission warning letter, I believe they called it, indicating it's business waste. It can't be there. And the option is to remove it by April 17th or apply for a non-farm use permit through the ALC. At this time, I don't know what the applicant will do. Should they apply for the non-farm use, that will come through FVRD first, where it will come to the board, and there will be an opportunity to discuss it and make a decision. If it's denied, that it doesn't go any further. If it's approved, it does go on to the ALC where they'll have their own decision-making process. So that's where we're at. The community is still nervous, quite frankly. I'm receiving many emails outlining what they would, what their wishes are. So stay tuned. We'll see what happens there.
Director Dixon, Director Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I received an email from the executive director from New Pathways to Gold Society, Don, and I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, Hauku, Aku, I don't know. Anyway, I passed the letter on to our CAO, Jennifer Kinneman, and she in turn gave it over to David Urban, who was glad to be of assistance. And what Don is looking for is a letter of support from the FBRD for BC Destinations Development Fund. So this money would be used to help with the restoration of the Alexander Bridge project. And I believe David also had some idea of to pass on to Don for the tourism plan as well. Anyway, Don was quite happy with making that connection and contact. So also I have an invitation from Chief Jordan Spinks from Kanaka Bar Band. He's invited me to attend Wawam on February 7th, and this is a new project addressing disasters and recovery. And I'm also happy to report that I received a call from Modi, and paving through Boston Bar will happen this year. The plan is to pave approximately 10 kilometers. And this week I participated in a 2-hour Zoom meeting providing input into the Fraser Canyon sign project. And this is part of the tourism master plan. And we'll provide signage from Yale to Lytton. So maybe we can fill in the gap from Hope to Yale between the two projects. Also then locally ongoing in our community is the CN Station project and the fire hall bay doors. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Director Johnson. Director Mercer, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Chilliwack, I'll go back a little bit. The Chilliwack's Integrated Community Safety Task Force is a body of work over almost 2 years long, which has culminated in an action plan for the city. One of the top 3 or 4 initiatives or goals of that plan was to create a one-stop shopping for, I keep fumbling saying people experiencing, I'm going to call it homeless people and just apologize. Creating a space for homeless people to drop in where they can receive the treatment, the guidance, and the advice they need. And we called it one-stop shopping. Like many communities, Chilliwack has many beds at night, short-term, medium-term, long-term housing opportunities for homeless people. But for many of those beds, at 7 o'clock in the morning or 7:30 in the morning, they have to be gone and they hit the street. And therein lies the challenge with the complaints from the community. This drop-in wellness center is near one of our higher populations, if I can refer to it that way. When they come through the door, they're greeted by someone who takes their name, a little bit of contact information, a little bit about them. Within that center, they can have coffee, soup, there's washer, dryers, showers. There's an area with tables where they can play board games, watch television. But more importantly, which differentiates this facility from other facilities, is there's a number of doors. One is Fraser Health offering counseling. One is, I think, Housing First, Ken. People that don't have a place to go and wondering how to get there. Another place is social workers. And there's a number of doors, and we're not quite done. There's more we want to see in there. We want to see clinicians. We want to see mental health workers. We want to see ACT teams. But this is a great start. It's unheard of. And it was great work by our staff at Chilliwack, support from Mayor and Council, but also BC Housing and Fraser Health. if anyone's interested and you reach out, I'm happy to take you by and you can have a look at what opened last week. Next week is coming quickly for everybody here in the province of BC with this ill thought out decision by our government to decriminalize portions of drugs. They came out with a little note here today from the Liquor Control Licensing and Marijuana Branch that it's to stop penalizing people with small quantities of drugs by decriminalizing them. And the reality is, in all of Canada in 2021, there was 21 possession charges for small amounts of drugs. It's been legal, decriminalized for many years. The courts don't prosecute it. The police don't enforce it for small quantities of drugs. There's still very many questions not answered in each of your communities. But right now, people will be allowed to inhale and inject in bus stops, on street corners. There are some restrictions around schools. There's no restrictions around parks at this time. You can't, in our city, you can't smoke marijuana in a park, but you can inject heroin. And there's nothing we as a community can do about it. On the 2nd of December of last year, the province promised that before the end of January, when this was to become in effect, that there'd be webinars for cities to dial into and learn about what the powers and authorities and what to do and what they can't do and what cities can, communities and regional districts can do. Absolutely none of that's happened. The only thing that has happened is Fraser Health has provided your police forces with little business cards that if you experience somebody that's openly injecting heroin or smoking meth, you can give them a business card and they're free to call Fraser Health if they wish. That's pretty much the extent of it. The scenario-based training that the police have taken, which is a quick video, talks about for the police what to do. This is put out by the Sol Gen's office or Attorney General, I'm not sure which, about what to do when you encounter people. But pretty much it's hands off, except for giving them a business card from Fraser Health. It will handcuff all of our police. I know as being a 35-year member and part of that a drug squad member. And I won't go into long details here, but one of the really bad outcomes of this is police no longer have the authority to question people who are carrying small amounts of drugs. And it used to be through that questioning that you learned where the drugs were from, and that was the evidence you used to obtain search warrants to do searches on houses where they're pushing drugs and selling drugs. Most of the information in that search warrant application comes from stopping somebody with drugs on them and asking them where they got them. And believe it or not, some people will answer. You can no longer do that legally. So it's completely stripping and handcuffing our police forces. And again, decriminalizing, it's been decriminalized for many years. And like I said, last year in Canada, I think it's either 21 or 22 charges across the country for possession of small amounts of drugs. So I know your police forces are frustrated, ours are. There is going to be a uptick, I believe, in complaints from the citizens. I'm already seeing them on social media. That it's already bad enough, but now they don't even, to quote one person, now they won't even need to feel guilty about injecting at a bus stop where my child is sitting because it'll be legal. So there we are. But if afterward, I don't want to take up any more time afterward. I'm happy to offer you any more information or scenarios that you should wish. Thank you.
Director Adamo.
Thanks, Chair Lum. I have had quite an interesting month. I want to thank, first of all, Graham Daniels and Dave Urban. They've taken quite a bit of great time to spend with me over a couple of issues, both in the Sunshine Valley and Yale, and they've given me some great insight and history, so that's been terrific to go through that with them, and I appreciate all of the time. I also attended with Director Johnson the Upper Fraser Canyon signage program to identify or to help participate in the process in selecting some of the new signage, incorporating both the First Nations and the historical value of the Upper Fraser Canyon from Yale to Lytton. So that signage program is moving along, and hopefully they'll have something to share with all of you. They didn't ask me for any money, but I'm thinking that that's probably coming at some stage to participate. So we'll see how that unfolds. Attended a few ratepayer meetings, and both within Yale and the Sunshine Valley. All was good there. But on behalf of the Sunshine Valley, we'd like to offer a great invitation to everyone and anyone who would like to attend our February 18th Winterfest in the Sunshine Valley. We're going from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Everyone is invited. You'll be able to bring your own skates. You'll be able to skate on the outdoor rink, perhaps the lake if it is frozen enough, as well as we have our headliner performer that evening, somewhere around 6:30, I believe, with Nearly Neil. If you've never seen his show, you'll be in for a real treat. Our hall holds about 200 people, and we have outdoor events, indoor events, snowball contests, lots of activities for all ages, from the children to the oldest. So you're all welcome to come out. And like Director Castles, I too want to thank all of our firefighters and recognize them: Glenn Sarson, as well as James Lamb, Ernest Kidd, and Kilwant Kula, and Alfonso Kula for their 5-year pins, Sean Dearden for a 10-year, Shane Leonard for his 10-year, and a really special thanks to Rudy Keller, who's a deputy chief now, but was a former chief for 35 years of continued service in the Yale district. So on behalf of Yale and Area B, thank them so much for their participation in helping us with our volunteer fire department. And that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Director. Director Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Director Johnson, just so you know that our mayor and council just signed a letter on Tuesday, sent in support of the Alexander Bridge. We think that's a very good project. So also that I've been appointed by the chair for the FSTI BC board, which used to be the Southern Interior Trust until 2 years ago. It changed. Used to be mayor used to be on it. When I'm on the Community Futures. So when I was on there, I just found out that Hope had never applied for a grant in 10 years, but we were on the board, which is kind of interesting. We missed out on a lot of money. So FSTI BC now includes Area B and A. So very proud that to announce that we have now got a grant for First Nations in Hope, and also one in Director Johnson's area, for do business, and take investigation and possibly business. So I'm glad that we've got funding for the areas, and look forward to that. And at Hope, Fire Chief Tom Sorcy retired, who's been there for very many years, and I'm sure quite a few different ones know him. He's been involved in very much in the area. And Thomas Cameron, seems to be part of the qualification to be chief in Hope, has taken over. He's been assistant chief for a while. Really good guy, and we look forward to many years of service with him and dealing with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Smith. Don't see any more lights on for director reports. Ms. Kinnaman?
So we will move to public question period for items relevant to the agenda, and we'll just turn things over to our corporate officer, Jamie Van Ness.
Ms. Van Ness.
Thank you. We do not have anybody joining us online, but we do have one member of the public joining us tonight, who I believe has a question.
Absolutely. Ms. Perrin, welcome. And Ms. Van Ness, do we ask our presenter to state their names for the record here? And is that
please.
Customary? Okay. Even though most of us know you, we'll get you to state your name for our records, please.
Yeah, Lynn Perrin. I'm from Abbotsford, Pratt Crescent. I really appreciate the update with regard to the Columbia Valley composting issue. That was why I'm here. So I would be interested in knowing if the response from the Ministry of the Environment will be available online, as was the October 6, 2022 letter from the FERD to Minister Heyman, and copied to ministers, including the Minister of Agriculture. So will that response, from the detailed response from the Ministry of the Environment be available to the public, or will I have to do a Freedom of Information request?
So you're referencing the letter that came under my signature to the minister, or are you referencing
No,
another
I've got
letter
that one already. I got
from
it
Director
online, actually. It's the one that
Dixon?
the director referred to,
Oh.
the recent one.
Or, so if it's addressed, let me take a crack at this first, and then I'll ask Karen. If it's, or Director Dixon, if it's addressed to the board, it would come through as correspondence. If it was a response to the board, as when we receive it, it's put on our agenda as correspondence, and you would have access to it when our agenda is posted. So you wouldn't have to do any kind of Freedom of Information request on it. So yeah, so as soon as when and if we get a response to any official correspondence from the regional district, we would post it in our correspondence.
May I give a little context to my inquiry?
Sure.
You know, I was involved in a similar issue in the township of Langley in 1990. A farmer was allowing waste to be spread on his fields, and the local wells were contaminated because of it. And the neighborhood got together and eventually resolved it. And this Columbia Valley isn't the only area where this is a problem. And so I don't know whether it, an effort by local governments who are going to be wrestling with this, or will soon be wrestling with this. Whether there's a good solid strategy that is in play. But I've been very involved in agriculture, and I'm a real strong advocate for it for many, many, many years. But also I've been very involved in public water issues, and also salmon habitat. And so I really hope that the collective can, and working with the provincial government, can come to some kind of really positive plans and resolution. And I look forward to seeing that detailed response from the minister that the director talked about. Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Dixon, I don't know if you wanted to provide some commentary there, because there's been a lot of correspondence that's gone. So I want to try and keep straight what came from the regional district and what came from some of the group and the committee that's working on it.
The reports that I mentioned, there are two of them, and I actually don't know where, if you would find them on the ALC site or the ministry site. However, I did receive permission to share them, and so I have shared them with my community. And I'm going to assume that you could probably find them somewhere. But so both the Ministry of Environment and the ALC said that I could share them. And I had done that.
And those reports, just if I can clarify that, and I hope I'm right, that was correspondence from the ministry to the applicant, or to the actual landowner, I guess, or the applicant. Yeah. So
yeah,
not
I
to
mean,
the regional
sometimes
district.
you can get things online. For instance, I do have the inspection record done by the Ministry of the Environment on that site. The non-compliant report. So I do have that. I was able to get it online. So hopefully I will be able to do the same with what you were speaking about. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been our position, Ms. Perrin, that the province has had the tools and the authority from the beginning to take action on this item. And so that's why you see a lot of the correspondence going back and forth from the province and the relevant ministries, the ALC, directly to the landowner or the applicant. So
I guess I have one more question. Is the local government able to fine the operation for any non-compliance?
Ms. Kinnaman, I think I know the answer, but yeah.
The short answer is no, but perhaps Mr. Daniluz would like to explain the nuances around zoning with respect to this property.
Mr. Daniluz.
Thank you, Chair. If we saw a continuation of the use, which is essentially a landfill use contrary to zoning, we could going forward, I think, ticket on our zoning bylaw. Up until more recently, we understood the use to be a permitted use of Class A compost. So that really confused the matter, the initial claim that it was a Class A compost. But now that that's been settled conclusively, if we saw further deposit, I do think we could be ticketing against our zoning bylaw.
Thanks. All the best, eh?
Thank you. Ms. Van Ness, any other questions from the public? I'll just check in. No one else online and seeing no other questions. Ms. Kinnaman, next item.
Looking for a resolution to close the meeting?
So moved. It's moved by Director Facio, seconded by Director Gibson. All in favor, opposed? If any, the item carries. We'll take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.